successful tutor than what it is people see on the surface level. So what you have to do right now is kind of a balancing act. You don't want to throw a bucket of ice water on them and kind of prune them right away. But you do want to let them know that there are some realities involved in this that they don't know they don't know. And you're in a unique opportunity right here and right now to kind of acquaint them with those things. So if that couple was sitting across from you and they wanted your advice, what were the type of thing that you would tell?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm really not concerned. If somebody wants to be my competitor, that's fine. I'll help them out as much as I can. One thing that I found is, helping somebody, it tends to work its way back to you anyway. It's kind of the giver's gain mentality. But also, it's hard to just go to an expert, and I'm just saying I'm learning, I'm trying to get better, but to go to somebody one time and learn everything you can about a business from one time with a person, it just doesn't work that way. So if their motives are pure and they just want to, they're not really coming out to take us out of business, and they generally aren't. Usually there's plenty of tutoring opportunities out there. I'm more than happy to help them. There's a lot more to it once you start going to somebody else's house than what a lot of people think. And so sometimes they'll call me and they're like, well, I see people advertising the tutor for maybe 60% of the cost that we would charge. But they also are not advertising, and it's how do you know that person is going to be the kind of tutor you want, right? It could be they're really good at math, and then you find out, oh, well, my child also needs science. Or I have another child that needs help with reading or English language arts. Well, the tutor can't help you. So what we can do is we have a team. So we can just find, if we need to, we'll get a different tutor. If the same tutor can do both, then we do that too. And that's what we offer our parents that is different. They also can look and they can see reviews that we've had. We've been in business for over 9 years, and we're not a fly-by-night company that's just out there trying to tutor. It would make me nervous if I had somebody saying, well, I see people posting on Facebook and they say, well, my kid is in high school and he can tutor this. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with high school tutors, because we've had some, and we do have a few, but I wouldn't be that wild about signing up for somebody that just did that. I'd want to know more information. So we have a team of tutors. They're different backgrounds. They've got different experiences, and we try to match up the right tutor for the right situation. And of course, somebody that's close to your house if we're going in person. So we put all that together to find the right fit for your child. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers it very well. In fact, I have some more to add to that.
Right.
Let's say if I were, it was me and my wife, and we had a kid, and we invited you over. What would that presentation look like when we open the front door and you guys are there, and it's our first time actually meeting you face to face? What is a household meeting like? So
we do. We don't do as many of those as we did before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, that was kind of the way the corporation had it set up. So a lot of times I'm doing them over the phone now, because a lot of times they're very desperate. We need somebody quickly, and so I end up talking to them on the phone. Then I go over there the first time, and then sometimes it can be a long discussion. But the questions, either if I'm on the phone or in person, it's going to be, what does your child need help with? When did this issue happen? Was it recently? I can't believe how many parents called me last spring, or let's just say last school year, and they'd say, my child has done great through math, all the way maybe through Algebra 1 or through geometry, and all of a sudden they've gone from A and now they're failing. Mm-hmm. What has happened? And I just don't remember that happening 5 years ago. And so then we have to try to pinpoint what it is. But what we do now is we have a math and we have a reading assessment that we can offer up to, say, 6th graders. And we'll start with that, and we don't necessarily go through the whole assessment, but we're just trying to determine what skills could they be missing that would maybe basically get them back on target again. Because a lot of times, if it's something that was a year or two ago, you think, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Not always, because a lot of times if we start working on it and they get it, they're like, oh, now this is making more sense to me. And then all of a sudden they can go to a B or an A. We had somebody talk yesterday. Their child got to a B minus. I was hoping it's going to be more like an A minus, but we're working on it. But she went from a failure to a B minus, so it's still positive. In my mind, I still want to get her to an A. That's just kind of the way it is. But it's really, what does the child want? And what does the parent want for the child? And again, like we said in the beginning, if they really just need help with their homework, then that's what we'll do. Sadly, in in our school system now, the elementary students do not get homework for the most part. So that's where we have to bring in materials. And so we have math and reading materials for elementary students because of that fact. So they can be struggling, they get their test back or they get a paper back and they didn't do very well on it. And there's nothing to really do about it other than they can redo the paper and they might get to a 70, which is like a C minus. But the parents are like, well, now what do I do? Because they're moving on to the next concept.
Yeah.
So it's great. So the business always changes. We can't just say we do homework now, but we sometimes have to bring materials in. But with high school students, they typically want help with their homework. That's what we'll do. Yeah. So whatever they need, we'll do it. If it's a test, we also do a lot of SAT test prep. And that one we actually have partnered with another company so that we can link into their website and we can actually do all of the SAT prep through one site. If the parent will get an upgraded account, which is not very expensive, they can actually, we can communicate. So the tutor can communicate with the student or the parent directly through the system. We've got materials, we've got practice tests, we've got everything you'd ever need to excel at the SAT all on one site. So it's really neat to have that, and we didn't develop it ourselves. It's not really, we do a lot of SAT, but I didn't really want to go research it and do it myself. We got somebody that really did it, and we've checked it, we've tested it, and it works well. And so we're excited to offer that as well.
Now before I move on to the next topic of discussion, you said something that really piqued me. You said in elementary school there's no homework?
I know, yes.
I don't understand that. Are you saying that the school no longer gives children homework assignments?
So what they do, so again, I'm not speaking for any particular teacher or school district, but what I'm hearing is pretty much across the board, because we're in multiple school districts anyway, is that elementary kids get home, they get schoolwork, but they have time in class to get it done. So you can say, does that mean they're not teaching for the full hour? I can't draw conclusions, but what happens is they're not having homework. So we have to bring in material to test what they're learning.
Oh man, I mean, you gotta know though, or at least intuit that, I mean, there's just so much more development that can take place when a child has the responsibility of taking an assignment home, doing that assignment at home, and then bringing it in. There's just so much value in that. I'm lost as to why they would.
So I don't know if they teach for like a half hour and then they give them a half hour to do their homework. They teach 40 minutes and give them 15 to 20 minutes. I don't know how that's all working out. But yeah, you would think there's less teaching time and more homework getting done or work getting done time. But I don't know that for a fact, and I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just telling you what I hear.
That kind of blows me away.
Yeah, it does me too. Yeah.
Just a little tidbit from me. When I was in Austin, I lived for many years in Austin. I did some substitute work for some schools there in Austin. One of them particularly was a Christian school. I was out doing some sub work, and of course, I'm just keeping the chair warm. While the teacher takes the Friday off, and I'm cool with that. But I've always been, very easy to talk to when it comes to the youth. I establish rapport very, very quickly. We have very good conversation. I've always enjoyed my interactions, especially with the high school youth, because they're right on the cusp of adulthood.
Yes.
But the strings of youth still pull at them.
Right.
So when I would have my substitute work, there wasn't any curriculum per se. The head guy, he allowed me. He said, "Okay, just keep your chair warm. So just if you could just kind of keep them, quote unquote, entertained and engaged, that would be great." So that was fine. And I would come in and I would have a conversation with them, and they were adult level conversations, and they appreciated that adult level interaction. And I called them to their higher adult selves. We didn't have conversations about youthful things. We didn't play around, so to speak. We were talking about stuff,
That's awesome.
But we weren't talking about anything that you couldn't have a camera in there and the parents could look in and say, "Ooh." It never went to that degree,
Right.
But in my interactions with them, I still remember some of them. There were a couple, 3 of them, and I'm sure you've experienced this when you're speaking to them and something clicks, and their face changes, their eyes change, and and then later, after the class disbanded, and I was the last class of the day, so we were all done. Those students would stick around, and we would talk some more. And it was obvious to me they wanted more information. They wanted to keep this vibe going. And what it indicated to me was, well, not indicated, but what I could intuit was I had broken a chain that was in their head. Some limiting factor was in their head, and it's like looking up and seeing two suns today and not one, and now you're basking in the warmth of a second sun. It's a whole new world, and I was so glad to be part of that. So gratifying to be at ground zero of an experience like that. And then when they were gone, and I would give my keys and go home, and I would think about that, I'd sit in the car and think that over, and then I get into traffic and I forget. So I just want to know, in your travails. Yours and your wife's travails, I'm sure you have seen on at least a couple of dozen occasions, maybe. That's a lot, but something that really clicked, and you just saw that the student just got it, and they had taken this quantum leap mentally, and they were now at the next level of a green plant shooting out of the soil, and you saw that, and you witnessed that, and you knew you were part of that, you knew you were the impetus, and maybe later on you had a chance to think about it and go, wow, they got that, and I was glad to be the fertilizer that helped them to get that. So, have you had the experience like that, Mike? Can you talk about something like that?
So we do, and a lot of times I've got to put that back to the tutor, and I always will make sure that any feedback I get like that from a parent, I go back to the tutor because they're the ones working with them. But yes, it is why we're here, and we've got to stay in a mindset where that is really highly celebrated. So yes, it is. Usually I'll go back and ask the parent, can you do a review for us? Because I want to know what their thoughts were. But a lot of times, these kids can start with usually it used to be like a grade, but now we're seeing it again across the board. They could be failing a class, and next thing you know, they're up getting an A. So a lot of times it's just a little click that they need, but they are not getting it, and the teacher's going too fast for them. So yes, I love that when a parent comes back to me and says, hey, they're doing so great. Sometimes they say, we're doing so great, we don't need tutoring anymore. Yeah. I'm like, great, and I really mean that. I'm not saying that because we're not in it to make the money. We're in it to help these kids, and we have to keep that mindset. I think you and I have a similar, I think we're close to the same age too, but I think we have a similar mindset, and that is, we've got to figure out how do we relate to these kids. So we can't act like our age. This is when we have to act a lot younger than our age, but still be the experience and bring in the knowledge that we have so that we can actually help these kids navigate, which is a very difficult path to walk these days. I do this, and I'm not trying to get off the subject here, but I was also at Beach Retreat with my church this year. I've done it 2 years in a row now, where we go for a week to Florida, and we're on the beach with these kids, these high schoolers, and so I have a bunch of guys and I'm in the condo with them. There's another leader, thankfully, and we're trying to help these young men mature. It's in their faith, but also just as people, as men. And so I had an opportunity this last year to talk to these two guys, and they're really the popular guys. The girls are all coming around them, and so that was an opportunity to say, hey, how are you treating these young ladies? And so they would come back and tell me, hey, here's what they're saying, and it was just really an interesting dialogue. And so we do the same thing with parents, maybe not quite to that level, but it was great to see these kids, and they really would come and look to me. And I'm probably like one of the oldest ones out there in the condos with them, but it doesn't matter how old you are. It's how do you think and how do you relate to them. But when if they're doing something that's off, I'm very quick to hey, this is not right. But it really is. It makes you feel good when you're helping these guys, not only academically, but just in life in general. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help them across the board. But in the tutoring realm, it's with whatever the parents are asking us to do. But I totally agree with you. It's great when they want to talk to you afterwards, because then that means they really do care, and what you're doing is making a difference. And that's what I do like to hear. So I always will pass that back to my tutors, and it really helps because you send a new tutor in, and we have a lot of tutors. I'm never sure. How well is this person? They did well in the interview, they took our test, they passed it, but can they really tutor? And when they do, it really makes my day.
And when